Andrew, thanks again for giving us some of your time. We've got some more questions from church planners. And the first one we've got is, do I need a degree to plant a church, or is theological education something I can get done along the way?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, there's a couple of questions in that one, and there's somewhat complex. If I can just try and tease it out, if someone were asking something along the lines of, "Do you need a bit of paper? The degree document?" Of course not. No one needs a theological bit of paper to plant a church. But do you need a theological education? Yeah, absolutely. Especially theological education meant in the kind of broader sense of being educated theologically, not sort of whether it's formal or informal. We ought always have planters and pastors who are theologically educated because, and I guess that's obvious, because the job we're in is the cure of souls. And it's taking dead people, bringing them to life through the gospel and applying the medicine of the word to their lives. And that task is a profound one, and it's got to be done well. It's done in the context of much opposition. There are all kinds of satanic efforts to undermine the work. Sin is brought into it, the world. It's a very difficult task. And so for guys who are engaged in establishing people into church and growing them in church, we need to be well grounded in the gospel, which is the cure. And we need to know how to apply it and apply it well. It takes great skill and care. So, yeah, we need to be theologically educated. But given the context of Australia, which is this massive need, there are vast places where no one's actually doing the work. It's not wrong, I think, from Geneva's perspective. We want to see guys get out there and reach the lost. And it's not wrong to send out guys perhaps who aren't as well trained as others, kind of like the field medic in the battle scene, where, he's the guy who's just out there stopping the hemorrhaging, and we need lots of that happening. The one who lands in a town, plants the gospel, gets people converted. We need that, but if a man intends to lay the foundations of an ongoing church work, and that's his long-term purpose, then he needs to know a lot more than two ways to live. He needs to be aware that he's laying the foundations that will set the direction of a church. Someone after him will probably come and have to repair the poor foundation. He's got to be well educated in the gospel, and depending on the kind of role you have, therefore, depends on the kind of level of theological education. We need lots of evangelists. We need them to land into a town, in a suburb, and kind of walk around with a defibrillator, and just get people converted, bring them to life. We need these guys, and Geneva's trying to identify a lot of those guys and just get them going. But the man who comes along to set up a church, who does a work beyond the evangelist, he needs a whole lot more theology.
Mate, I understand what you're saying, but I think the question is also going to address whether or not someone goes to a college, because I think you've laid a good answer that people need that education, but do they need to go to a college for it, or can they get that themselves, or does this depend on their personality?
Yeah, very, very good. Well, that's exactly where I was about to go. Thank you. That's good. Because it seems to me that foundation has to be laid, because there's been a lot of critique about kind of the formal theological education institutions and how they've set up these hoops that people have to jump through to be able to get out and do the work, and it's slowing us down. And there's been a lot of critique about that. But I do think in our reaction against that, there can be inadvertently a falling into the very same institutional thinking that gets us in the same kind of problems. So that in our reaction against the formal denominations that require degrees before you can do ministry with them, we're saying, no, that's, Spurgeon didn't have a degree. We don't need degrees. The apostles didn't have degrees. Let's just go and do it. And I want to ask the question, a theological degree really is just a marker that someone's completed a set of studies, covered a certain area of theology. And so my view is that the kind of areas of study that the degrees in our colleges around us are providing, that's the kind of theological education we need planters and pastors to have. Now, if you're going to be the startup evangelist, I think that's a different kind of deal. But if you're going to be the bloke who founds the church and not just wins people to Christ, but establishes them in a community and builds the foundations, I think we need a whole lot more. And so on the specific of formal theological education, I think there's some freaky people out there who can get the kind of theological education that's needed by their own disciplined application of themselves.
I think we've got a mate in Tasmania who might be one of them.
I was just about to say, I think Mikey Lynch is one of those kind of guys. I think Mikey would love to have been through formal theological education, but he's a disciplined, well thought through, he reads widely, broadly, deeply, and there are people like that, like the Spurgeons. And so, no, the issue is theological education, and then the question is, what kind of person am I? Have I got the discipline, the wherewithal to get that theological education by my own efforts? Or am I the kind of person who would be helped by having a structured program within which I work and operate with people around me to stir me in that course and so on? And look, I think the reality is too, once you start a church plant, if it is blessed and begins to grow, then you're going to be so busy there, it's going to be pretty hard pressed to make...
Sorry, this is my wife who's just stepped in to say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Nice to meet you, sorry.
My wife hasn't realised that we're being recorded at the moment.
Bye.
Very nice, though.
Yeah. There's a little family touch for the rest of our Geneva family. Look,
beautiful.
Sorry to interrupt you there. But what I might shift us onto, I think that you're right. You've established the nature of the personality often has a big deal to do with it, and I actually think you're probably right in saying that Mikey's something of a rarity. Like a lot of us can benefit from having a structure that actually takes us through things when we don't want to. Let me ask you a bit about that structure though, just briefly. You're talking to a national audience. Actually, we've got some internationals, chiming in to look at our stuff. If they're looking for a college, if they've decided that's the way they're going to do that, they would like to do some theological education. There's lots of different types. There's those that offer straight theology, and then there are some that build in some management ideas, and others that have sort of some of the social working aspects that are associated with planning a church. What do you think are the essentials that a person might have to look for in a course to pick the right one?
Yeah. My experience here, when we started here all those years ago, my education was through a strict theological college. So there was very little pragmatics of ministry, how to conduct management exercises, services and so on. The majority of it was know your Bible, know the history of theology, get to know the original languages, do some textual work and so on. In the ethics, that kind of broader work. I didn't regret a day of that, and found when we started, I was so grateful that I'd spent the time on it. And so I've had a lot of people critique me over the years that shouldn't ministers' education include much more of that other management business stuff. But my view is that the work we're in as cure of souls, being first and foremost the task, requires such a deep grasp of the gospel and the theology of God that we can protect from error and ground in a deep and rich truth, that we need men and women for whom that's their heartbeat.
Someone's keen to talk to you. So I take it if that stuff, you're not saying that stuff isn't valuable or might not have a place, but if you're going to pick the first thing that you're going to concentrate on, then curers of souls really have to know the theology first.
Yeah. We don't want planters and pastors who are leader managers who do some theology. We want planters, pastors who are theologians, who are first and foremost pursuing the knowledge of God themselves, who love knowing God and want to deepen their knowledge of God and want to convey that to others. They're the kind of planters, pastors we need first and foremost, who then pick up leadership and management skills.
Mate, not an easy topic, but thanks very much for talking to us about it.
Yeah, pleasure.